Hello, you are listening to A Woman's Guide, episode 27. Are you depressed? Do you know what kind of depression you are experiencing? What is causing it? What can you do to find the true cause of this depression, and how can you alleviate the symptoms? Today's episode is dealing with depression. Stay tuned. This is a woman's guide to reclaiming wholeness after sexual abuse. For all of you listening, welcome to the show. I am Simone, your confidant and guide. Thank you for tuning in. Depression. Oh gosh. Depression. Yeah, so this is a very big topic. Very, very big topic and very, very appropriate topic, right? Specifically for, this, the pathos of this show, right? And for the topic of sexual abuse, or at least, the angle to which I'm talking about how, or what we need to heal or what we need to deal with relating to sexual abuse. Okay, so this is definitely something we need to talk about, or I need to talk about. Sorry, it's just me speaking here. Okay, so depression. This can be a disorder, can be a mental illness or whatever. This can be a disorder or a mental illness for that fact, or I would say a state of being that many people have experienced or are experiencing in their lives today on some level. And of course, it does not have to just be a mental illness. It can be, you can just be in a state of depression, but it doesn't mean that you need to, you're to be diagnosed as depressed. Okay, but yes, you can be in a state of depression, or you can be diagnosed and you can have what they call an illness of depression. But I'm not really so hooked on names and categories and pinpointing exactly what the issue is in terms of what you have or what you possess. I think it's just about knowing what you're experiencing and knowing the state of being that you're in, because it can change. At any moment it can change. But yes, depression can obstruct your everyday living, of course, and it can interfere with every aspect of your life. I meet a lot of people who are depressed, and maybe you are depressed too, and it's affecting your relationships, your family, your work, your career, your health, your ability to go out, your ability to socialize, your ability to accomplish anything. Okay, depression is really a serious thing that people are going through, and it's terrible. Honestly, it's really, really terrible. I've been depressed many times. I was not diagnosed as being depressed, but I was depressed because I know I was depressed, and I was depressed for a very long time. So, I was depressed for a long time, and then it stopped, and then it came back, and then it came back in a different way, and then it left, and it came back, and it was just like I was constantly living under this dark cloud. And that's what I associate to a commercial that I've seen, and it really was a depression commercial about some character or some cartoon that was walking, and they had this dark cloud hanging over their head for everywhere they went. That's exactly how I felt. So I know I was depressed. Anyway, yeah, but depression can affect all different parts of your life. It really can. So it's important. And for this topic today, I would I'm speaking mainly, I guess, within the guidelines of, a persistent depressive disorder, which is categorized as, or which encompasses depressing states of dysthymia. It's hard to say it fast. dysthymia, which means it's just a mild type of depression. It's very low. It's a low-grade depression, and persistent depressive disorder can encompass this to more of a major depression, or what they would call clinical depression, which is chronic. So any grade in between, any level in between, okay, whether it's dysthymia or on its way to major clinical depression, can be persistent depressive disorder. But persistent depressive disorder is categorized as something that occurs, this depression that occurs for 2 years or longer. So it's persistent and it's constant. You're always depressed. This is what they would categorize it. Now, but if you can follow me, the major and clinical depression that I was speaking about within the PDD, okay, which is persistent depressive disorder. It's too long to say that. By itself, major or clinical depression can occur most times, but not all the time. It can be most days of the week, most hours of the day, but it's not all the time. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not all the time. The PDD is all the time. It's persistent, and it's 2 years or more, but the major clinical depression is most of the time. Okay? So sometimes you may feel okay. And the funny thing is, it's really bizarre. I mean, mental health is really, really bizarre, but major clinical depression is more of a chronic type of depression. So I find it a little bit funny that, you may experience it most days. So you may experience it 5 days out of the week or 6 days out of the week. And sometimes you may snap out of it, and then you go back to depression a little bit again, or a little more again. And then you might snap out of it again the next 5 days later. It's just a little bit strange. But anyway, that's very weird. But anyway, that's mainly the guidelines of what I'm speaking about here. Okay, so in the relationship to this episode, which is about depression, it definitely can tie into, or it can accompany those other things that I was speaking about in my other episodes about emotional fatigue and exhaustion, emotional slumps, upheavals, and also that depression can result from PTSD. I mean, that is one of the symptoms of PTSD is depression. So yeah, this is very connective and intertwined with those other shows and other episodes. So emotional fatigue and exhaustion, it does not mean that emotional fatigue and exhaustion is depression, or it can, it just explains or expresses a kind of depression, not necessarily, because I've read that it could be two separate things. People can confuse it though. They can confuse it. Or you can experience the emotional fatigue and exhaustion in conjunction with depression. So that means you can have both. You can be emotionally fatigued and exhausted, and you can be depressed. Or emotional fatigue and exhaustion can lead to depression. So you see what I'm saying here? Emotional slumps can be a depression, because it's an emotional slump, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're depressed. Yeah, so I hope you're following me with this. I mean, it's just, these are all connected, they're all intertwined, they're all related to one another, but there are variances and there are differences, and, with a lack of wanting to confuse or make it so complex. But that's just the way I am. I like to get all information, and I like to look at it from different angles, and I want to see the variances with it. Okay, so that's why it's very important for you not to diagnose yourself. It's very important for you to do that, because you may not know completely what is going on with you. You may not know what you're dealing with. You may not know if it's temporary or it's permanent, or if it's something that it's affected physically by something in your body, an imbalance or an abnormality, or you don't know if it's a situational thing, or you don't know if it's something that derives from your past childhood or your traumatic event or whatever. You don't know what it is. Some things are genetic. Some things are, you know what I mean? We don't know. So anyway, depression is, what would have me making a separate episode is really just, because it's so severe. And of course, like I said, it relates very much so to things that we've gone through in our childhood, or it could be something recently. I mean, I can't sit here and say that it's only within your childhood. If you were sexually abused, it doesn't have to just be in your childhood. It could be something that happened a year ago. It could be something that happened 2 years ago. So depression has a lot to do with these type of things. It has a lot to do with abuse. It has a lot to do with survivors of abuse, and how serious it can be, and the various issues that the various issues that abuse can have on the mind, on the body, in your health, in your vitality, in just everything, in your functioning of life. It's a direct link. It's a direct link. Okay? So anyway, I think the next step right now is to speak about the causes of depression. And I know I just basically said in my own way what can cause depression, but there are other reasons, and there are deeper reasons, and there are more detailed and intricate causes for depression. It's not just so surface. There's many different folds to it, many different sides, many different branches to it. So anyway, now let's get into the symptoms. Let's get into the symptoms of depression. Okay, and I just compile these symptoms as a general symptoms for depression, and there's many different kinds, which I'm going to distinguish a little bit between some of them, the variances between them, but this is really the general symptoms that are experienced with depression. Okay, so the first one is fatigue. Fatigue, that is a major one. Fatigue, physical fatigue, emotional fatigue sometimes. Oh yeah, emotional fatigue as well. But fatigue, to have consistent and frequent fatigue, within your body. So, and of course, I mean, like I've said before in my other episodes, the emotional and mental are connected to the physical body. So you can have fatigue for sure. You're going to have some physical fatigue for sure. Okay, so the other one is feelings of sadness, emptiness, and hopelessness. That's another major symptom. Major symptom is feelings of sadness, emptiness, and hopelessness. A lot of people feel some symptoms of sadness, emptiness, and hopelessness, where what's the use type of thing, and oh, life is not worth living. I don't care about myself. I don't care about my life. I don't care about anything I'm doing. That is a major symptom. Okay, major symptom. Feelings of guilt, feelings of shame, and that can tie in specifically with sadness and emptiness. Feelings of guilt and shame, worthlessness, constantly thinking of past failures, mistakes, beating yourself up about things that you've done or you haven't done. Doesn't that really, in so many ways, link itself to those feelings that we have or we had when we were abused, or how you felt after you were abused? Isn't that a direct link to, those PTSD symptoms as well? The feelings of guilt and shame and worthlessness. It's no wonder why people who who have been abused in that way feel depressed because they're having a whole, heavy, dark feeling of being guilty, of being shamed, of feeling worthless. I mean, it's a direct link. It's exactly the same thing, right? Trauma and abuse causes depression. Many times it causes depression because of these feelings of guilt and shame, not feeling enough, feeling hopeless, and feeling like, what's the point? What's the use of everything? How am I ever gonna feel better again? I don't think I'll ever feel okay again. And you're living in this darkness. Yes, it's a direct link. The next point is difficulty concentrating. Difficulty concentrating, fogginess, indecisiveness. And I don't know what it is about when your brain is just not working. You cannot concentrate. Same thing with the emotional fatigue and exhaustion and all these different things. You can't concentrate because your mind is fried. It's zapped. It's drained out. It's overworked. It is tired. You know what I'm saying? So you can't concentrate. You have difficulty concentrating. You have fogginess. You have indecisiveness. Your cognitive ability is impaired when you're depressed. Sometimes you may find it hard to make small decisions. Small decisions can be overwhelming or hard for you to do because your mind is not operating efficiently. It's not operating at its optimum. You feel overwhelmed, okay? And because you just have this, I guess, impairment, or you have this fogginess, or this indecisiveness, you feel overwhelmed because it's like you can't do what you once did, because it's taking you so much longer and it's taking so much more energy for you to make these decisions. You understand what I'm saying? Okay? So, I mean, I'm just seeing this symptom so much. Difficulty concentrating. I mean, geez. Yeah. Throughout the episodes, difficulty concentrating. Insomnia. Oh, yeah, insomnia. Trouble sleeping or excessive sleeping. And this is where it's going to go into distinguishing between the different kinds of depression. Okay, well, I'm not going to get into that yet, but what I'm saying is insomnia. It can range from insomnia or trouble sleeping to excessive sleeping. So it can go on the total opposite of the spectrum, okay? So insomnia can be caused by or can be provoked by restlessness or agitation or irritation or nervousness or however it is you want to describe this restlessness as. So insomnia can be provoked by restlessness, because I mean if you're going to be having anxiety and having stress and having agitation within your mind, you're not going to settle down to sleep because your mind is tied up, it's tied out, it's on edge. You're consistently running tapes over in your mind over and over and over again. This agitation, this restlessness, even in your body, you may not be able to settle down. That's going to cause insomnia. You're not going to be able to just calm down and relax and go to bed because your body is responding to your mind. And if your mind is just overworked and restless and agitated and running through all these things that you've done and you should not have done, or guilt and shame and despair and hopelessness, you're not going to sleep. Now, for excessive sleeping, for some people, and in some types of depression, and also because everyone experiences depression differently. Everyone is unique, so it affects other people differently. Everyone's brain is different, so it affects other people differently. But I would say mainly some depression, okay, some kinds of depression, it causes a slowing down in the functioning of your thoughts, of your speech, of your speaking, your body movements, your reactions, everything slow down. So what happens when you're slowed down? You slow down and you sleep, and you can sleep for a very long time. You can sleep for a very long time. Okay? So these, like I said, these are just overall the general type of things. Restlessness, well, I mean, it's actually quite detailed, but you know what I'm saying. I'm just really giving you the points that, encompass a lot of this depressive symptoms. Restlessness, agitation, like I just said, anxiety, the slowing down, so you can have a slower functioning. Okay? Lack of interest and pleasure in things that you once had interest in. Socializations, relationships, passions, the things you usually like to do, the things that you love to do, the things that you couldn't get enough of. You just have a lack of interest and pleasure. You don't have any pleasure or interest in anything anymore. You don't care. That's another big symptom of depression that, it's a really popular symptom. It's a lack of interest and pleasure. Okay. And this is another point where this is another point that really expresses, I guess the spectrum or the contrast between things that we can do because we're depressed, which I will also get into the next couple episodes, is neglect and overindulgence. So, and I think this is more getting into the more chronic type of major depressions when you start neglecting yourself. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be chronic necessarily. There are grades and there's degrees to it. But I think that when you really start neglecting your hygiene, personal hygiene, your grooming, your self-care, and of course, everybody's different. I mean, some people can be totally at the edge, and then they start to neglect their personal care because they're totally at the edge. They're all the way to the point where it's starting to get serious. And then some people in the earlier stages of depression, they start to neglect. So it really just depends. So yeah, you neglect your personal hygiene, you're grooming your self-care. Eating, sleeping, relationships, your responsibilities, well, because why? You don't care. You don't have the energy to. You're fatigued. You don't want to bother. What's the point? It doesn't matter. Nobody loves me anyway. I don't love myself. I don't care about life. Who cares? So this is why I would say that it's getting to be more chronic, right? Overindulging now. Overindulging in food, overeating, alcohol, excessive activities, social media, texting, shopping, spending money, whatever it is. And I think this is really a symptom that a lot of people do not notice as a sign of depression. This is actually one of the least, it's one of the least recognized symptoms, but it's one of the most popular. Okay, is this overindulgence of things. It's this overdoing of things. Okay, is a warning sign of depression. Is when you're just overdoing everything or one thing. Okay, and why do you do that? Well, because you want to overcompensate for what it is that you are lacking on the inside, because you want to feel better, because you want to distract yourself, you want to numb yourself. Okay, we'll get more into that to the next episode, because I don't want to really speak everything that I want to speak in my next episode. But yeah, okay, I'll speak more about that later in the other episodes. Okay, which are the next two. Okay, so anyway, the next point is significant weight loss or weight gain. So that comes from what? Not eating, or eating too much, neglect, or overindulgence. Physical issues. This is another one too. Physical issues, chronic pains, back pains, headaches, migraines, just discomforts in your body, feeling pain. And I'll explain to you, which is quite interesting what I learned about this. But in terms of what they classify as mental illness, which is depression, mental illness and pain, share the same pathways in your brain, the same neurotransmitters in your brain. So what happens is that when we are feeling awful or crappy or depressed or whatever, we tend to sink more into the pain that's within our body, and we feel it more acutely. And it doesn't mean that there is more pain. It doesn't mean that we are feeling more pain or more pain is occurring in our body. But it's just that when we are in that depressed state, we tend to have more of a sensitivity. We tend to feel it more. We tend to have less of a tolerance to pain. And that's why we feel so hurt physically when we are hurt mentally. You understand what I'm saying? So it's one of the same. Physical illness and mental illness or depression and pain, physical issues. Okay, even with the body fatigue too, same thing. I think that would throw that in with the pain as well, the fatigue. Okay, I would say it shares the same pathway in neurotransmitters as emotional fatigue, as being drained out emotionally and mentally. You're physically going to be fatigued and drained out because emotionally and mentally you're drained out as well. So that makes so much sense. Yes. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what I wanted to do now is to bring your attention to the different kinds of depression, but it's just very, very brief, just to distinguish that there are different kinds, and possibly this can help you with pinpointing something. And I'm not saying diagnose yourself. Try not to diagnose yourself. It's just possibly this can bring some awareness to something. And maybe you can relate it to something else that you know of within yourself and whatever. I'm just saying, I think that it would be helpful to know this, right? But like I was explaining with persistent depressive disorder, PDD, okay? PDD, like I said, it ranges from dysthymia, which is a very low-grade persistent depression, to the major or clinical depression, which is more chronic. And with the PDD, it's 2 years or longer. So it's something that is consistent and it's persistent and it goes on and on and on and on. I'm not hearing or not seeing that it's just most of the time. I'm just hearing that it's persistent. Okay? Now, when you were just speaking about major or clinical depression by itself, it's not a persistent depressive disorder. It's just a depression. It's just the depression. It's the mental illness, or it's the whatever, the sickness, whatever you want to call it. It can occur most of the times, most of the days of the week. It can occur. Okay? And I find that the difference between, let's say, PDD and major or clinical depression in its own right by itself is that there's more physical symptoms. Major or clinical has more physical symptoms, agitation or sluggishness. This is where you would have more trouble sleeping when it's major. So it's when it's chronic, okay, that's when you have more trouble sleeping. You become more of an insomniac. You have more physical symptoms, more pain, more discomfort, more agitation. Okay? With the PDD, you don't really necessarily, what I'm seeing is that you don't have so many physical symptoms, but it's still depressive. You still are depressed. And the funny thing is, you can be depressed for a long time that you get so used to it that it just becomes a part of your normal and you don't really notice the symptoms as such. You just feel as though you're just walking around and you're sluggish and you're tired and you're, unmotivated and you're discouraged and you're slightly irritated or you know what I mean? Because like I said, it ranges from low grade, which is mild, to chronic. So anything in between. But because it's so persistent, you don't notice it after a while. You just kind of walk around and things are just blah, blah, blase, no energy, I'm fatigued, I don't care, nothing matters. You know what I'm saying? But major is more of a chronic, more intense. And this is where, did I say, I don't think I said, this is major and clinical depression is where you have thoughts of suicide. So this is why people call it major or clinical, because it's something that needs to be dealt with clinically, because it's dangerous, or what they consider to be dangerous, because you have thoughts of suicide. It's chronic. You know, the helplessness, the hopelessness, the feelings of sadness, the feelings of what's the use has got so bad that you're thinking about suicide. So those, you know, it varies. There's grades of it. But major and clinical depression, definitely, it's a very serious thing. Persistent depressive disorder can also be a serious thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the point where it's clinical. Okay, there are other depressions, like I was saying, and I'm just going to, you know, very briefly go over a couple of them, is atypical depression. Atypical depression is another depression that I think is very it's really understood, not understood, it's not so understood, it's not so recognized, but I think it's more common than most people think. Because I will say this, because the main characteristic distinguishing between this one and the other ones is that you have more heaviness in the arms and the legs. So you may just mistaken this as, oh, I'm just so tired and fatigued. But this can be that depression. Heaviness in arms and legs, that's what it's characterized by. Okay, so it's almost like a form of paralysis. So I think some people may see it as something else. You know, they may think of it as being some other kind of issue or some other kind of problem that they're having, but it's really depression. You understand what I'm saying? And another thing that can characterize this is just the fact that it's an over type of thing. It's an overindulgent type of depression where you are overeating and you are oversleeping. You're doing things to excess. And while it's not, I don't think it's really as major depression or clinical depression, it's more of something that people really generally look at it and think of it as something else, so you don't really recognize it as a depression. But I think a lot of people have this atypical depression because it's not so easily recognized, you know. And I know that there are a lot of people that I have met, and people, even me, at some point, I've dealt with atypical depression, I believe. Not that I'm diagnosing myself, but I think it was more of something like this, where I was overeating and oversleeping. I just slept a lot. I slept a lot. At some point, I did sleep a lot. Not a lot of time throughout my life up to this point, but there was a period of time where I slept a lot. And I was overeating. Oh my God, I was overeating everything I can find. Okay? But at the other end of the spectrum, I was depressed, and I was around 18. And this was a time where I was, you know, I got my heart broken. But, you know what? I'm going to talk about that another time. Psychotic depression, and this is another one where people, this is more of a serious type of thing where it can be, you know, where you have false beliefs or delusions, or you're just hearing and seeing things, you're having hallucinations. Yeah, that can be a different kind of depression. There's other depressions, and there's like bipolar disorder, and then they have the premenstrual syndrome. That is also considered a disorder too. I don't know where they're getting disorder from. It's more of a syndrome. we know about the premenstrual syndrome, and then there's menopause, and you know what I mean? Postpartum depression, that is also a very real depression. That's not something I can really speak about because I don't have any children, but also I don't really want to get into that because I know that's something that is more easily recognized than others, okay, because we know why it's happened and we know what we can do about that. Okay, but depression in general here is what I'm really getting into. Okay, so that's what I really wanted to distinguish between you, between the types of depressions that I was speaking about. Oh, and this is something that I wanted to point out. This is another thing that I wanted to say is that women are twice as likely to experience depression, clinical depression, which is a serious major one, okay? And for different reasons, because first of all, we're very hormonal. We have a lot of hormonal flux, a lot of hormonal changes, and I say this because of puberty, you know, when we're young girls, and then menstruation for I don't know how many years, 30 years, 40, 50 years you have menstruation for, and pregnancy, which is where you get the postpartum depression, which I briefly said, miscarriages, that can create a whole bunch of other mental and emotional flux, and later on menopause. So just look at all of that, just hormonally, the changes that we go through within ourselves, what can cause so much flux within us, and add on to that the life crap, add on to that, you know, childhood stuff, childhood issues, childhood sexual abuse, physical, emotional abuse, add to that bad relationships, toxic relationships, stress, work, financial issues. I mean, you can understand why women have so much, why women are so, you know, prone to being depressed. You can understand that. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. So anyway, what can cause depression? Okay, I'm going to give you some reasons. I'm going to give you some, you know, some of my really deep thoughts in terms of what I think depression really entails, and not entails, because we already spoke about the symptoms, but what it really can come from, and the different things that it can derive from, and the ways that we can understand how it can come about within our lives, okay? So anyway, for the external reasons, because it's always external in terms of things in our life happening. And of course, you know, I don't want to confuse, but what I'm saying is that really, you know, it's the external things that can have us put into a place emotionally, internally, where we can feel depressed. But it's really what external causes can cause depression. Well, first of all, so you can be in some stressful circumstances. This can be a cause of depression. Stressful situations, perhaps you're the breadwinner. You're the one that brings home the cheese, brings home the bread, you know. You're the one that brings in the income to take care of your family, perhaps. You're the caregiver to people in your family. You're the one that people lean on. Perhaps you have a lack of support and you don't really have a lot of people helping you, and you have to do everything yourself. Or you lost a job, you're unemployed, you have financial troubles and difficulties and situations, relationship issues, divorce, separation, affair, betrayal, death and loss of a loved one. I mean, these, you know, there's many, many different scenarios and experiences with that. And this is what we would call situational depression. So that's another kind of depression where, what is it? Situational. So it depends on your situation that can cause more of a depression within you. Okay. And like I said, yes, everything starts from the inside. Everything starts from the inside. Everything really begins on the inside, right? But externally, you have situations where it's very hard for you to maintain internal state, especially if you haven't mastered yourself emotionally, mentally. But you can have some very overwhelming circumstances where, you know, humanistically, it's extremely hard to find ourselves in a really good spot when someone dies. Okay? When someone loses their life, when someone breaks up with us, or we separate from someone that we've been with for 20 years or 30 years, or, you know, we are without income for a very long time and we don't know how we're going to pay our bills or pay or whatever. So, yes, external situations, external reasons that can cause internal stress and can cause depression. So, situational depression. Okay, or the situational circumstance can cause depression. The next reason is hormonal imbalances. And this is why this is the main reason why women are so prone to depression, because of hormonal, imbalances. Men can have it too, men can have it too. Perhaps there's too much toxins as well. Too much toxins, nutritional deficiencies, like you're lacking in certain vitamins. I know specifically for B vitamins that can cause depression. Lacking in iron, lacking in thiamine, lacking in B1, B12, B10, B6, those type of things can cause depression. I forgot to say that with the hormonal imbalances, like if you have a problem, going back to adrenaline fatigue, your body's not pumping out enough hormones, if you have problems with your thyroid, if you have hypothyroidism, if you're experiencing problems with your hypothalamus or pituitary gland, or your whole system, your whole endocrine system, which is responsible for hormones and the balance of your body, if that is out of whack, of course your mood is going to be out of whack too. So hormonal imbalances, which is possibly caused by some, inadequately functioning organ or organ system, or some abnormality within your brain, within your mind, or something like that. Okay? Too much toxins. Toxins can cause depression. When you eat a lot of junk, don't you feel like junk? You eat too much chemicals, preservatives, colors, dyes, chemicals that can, chlorine, stuff that can erode your mind over time. I mean, that's going to cause depression too. Nutritional deficiencies, like I said. The next cause is trauma. That is the next cause, and that is why I'm talking about it, mainly. Trauma, abuse, earlyhood trauma, early childhood trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, abandonment. But yeah, sexual abuse is what we're speaking about, what we always speak about. Yeah, that can cause depression. And I'm going to get just going to keep going a little bit deeper, okay, so I can explain to you why exactly you would be depressed. But anyway, so the real reason, I believe, internally, is what causes depression. And this is what I've seen. This is what I've experienced, okay? But everything, like I said, starts internally with a thought, okay? It's not just the external circumstances. It's what you are, how you're interpreting that external circumstance, and how you're dealing with the external circumstance within yourself. I think that depression overall really happens when there is too much negative emotions, thoughts, and beliefs within yourself, and it's compacted, and it's suppressed, and it's depressed. And I think that once you have all of these emotions and these thoughts and these beliefs, and they're toxic, just like I was saying with some of the symptoms, which are shame, guilt, feelings of worthiness, unworthiness, having doubt, beating yourself up, whatever, okay? When you have these thoughts, negative thoughts, emotions, and beliefs, and when you do not face and deal and work through those issues, those emotions, those thoughts, and they are held within you, okay? When you're holding it inside, or you feel like you're unable to deal with those emotions and thoughts and beliefs, okay, that can cause depression. That can cause depression. I mean, if you make the connection with the symptoms and what it is that you are feeling because you are depressed, guilt, shame, feelings of unworthiness, feeling stupid, feeling not enough, beating up on yourself, you know, those type of things, that is going to depress you, especially when you have it and you hold it in within yourself, or you feel like you're unable to deal with that within yourself. That's going to cause depression. I don't think it's just because things are happening to us or we're having this bad feeling. When we keep it to ourselves and we keep it down and we keep it locked, and furthermore, what I'm saying about many times when we're depressed is that we feel alone and overwhelmed with thoughts, emotions, and pressures, expectations, and we feel unsupported and unloved. And this could literally be true. That's going to make us feel depressed. So if you are dealing with all these issues and thoughts and emotions and beliefs about yourself, and they are negative, and you are replaying those tapes in your head over and over and over and over and over and over again, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, and you are not sharing this with anyone, and you feel alone, or you feel alone, and sometimes you're not really alone, it's just that you think you're alone, and you think you can't tell anyone. So that's going to make you think that you're alone, and so you're alone. So that continues to have you in this reel, in this tape in your mind, guilt, shame, unworthiness, guilt, shame, unworthiness. I'm so stupid, I'm so ugly. You know, my life sucks. Nothing's ever going to happen for me. Nothing's ever going to get better. It sucks. I hate my life. I'm done with this. And you're by yourself with these static tapes, and you feel alone because you think you're alone, even though you're not alone. So when you're alone, you continue with those tapes. And when you continue with those tapes, what do you feel? You feel overwhelmed. And the more overwhelmed you become, and when you feel overwhelmed, the more depressed you feel because you can't seem to find anybody else who cares or anybody else who would help you in the situation because you think you're alone. Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope I'm experiencing it. I hope I'm explaining it the best way I can. Because sometimes it's really just in our head. Because when we're in our head, we think that no one cares. We're feeling hopeless, and we're feeling possibly unloved, and we're feeling possibly unsupported. And sometimes that is not true. Or sometimes that is true. Okay? That's going to make you feel depressed. You're having all these issues and having all these feelings and these emotions, which are toxic, which are negative, which are just spewing out this negative energy toward you. And you're playing it over and over and over and over and over again. You don't know if you can handle these emotions. You don't know if you're able to face the real originators or the origins of these feelings. So you don't deal with them, but then they keep coming up, they keep replaying, they keep going on and torturing you over and over again. And you're thinking, okay, well, I'm alone. But you're not alone. You're actually isolating yourself, or you're actually thinking because, you cannot deal with these things within yourself. You think that you're alone. You think that nobody else cares, but it's only because you're not facing what's going on inside of you. So you just think that you're alone. And because you think you're alone, you have to bear it all by yourself. And then you become overwhelmed by all of these things that are within you that really need to come up, and need to come out, need to be dealt with. But you rather keep it to yourself, and then you're ultimately making yourself more depressed, more overwhelmed, you're feeling more isolated, you're feeling more cut off, you're feeling more detached, and that's making you more depressed. Okay? When you have an emotional and mental conflict, something is not in alignment. Okay? There's some kind of a dissonance there, or something that's not being dealt with, or something that's not being brought together in alignment. And you're having a conflict. And you're having an ongoing conflict. There's a dissonance between your mind and yourself. Okay? There's something that's going on in your emotional body that you're not paying attention to. There's something that is coming up that you're blocking out. There's something that you need to recognize or see, but you're not dealing with it. You don't think that's going to cause a conflict? And if that conflict continues long enough, you are going to get depressed. And if you don't bring it out, if you don't speak it, if you don't talk to someone else about it, it's going to depress you. It's going to cause you to go deeper and deeper into darkness. And I can attest to this. I'm telling you, because I've gone through this myself. Okay? When you keep things in, it's going to make you depressed. A lot of the times, you don't bring it out, it's going to depress you. Okay? It's going to depress you. Okay, so let's get into overcoming depression, or at least minimizing the symptoms of depression. Okay? Because, I mean, after all, it's all a choice, and it's all about identifying exactly what it is and using what works for you. So first of all, going back to what I said about the possible causes of depression, or what worsens it. I just explained that to you in detail. You got to find the source. Or, of course, what is most likely causing this depression. And sometimes, especially when you've been in depression so long, you cannot recognize what's really causing this depression because you've been feeling it for so long. You can't really identify it. Find the source, you know what I mean? Figure out what it is. Maybe there's something you haven't dealt with yet. And because, you know, I'm going to make everything in light of sexual abuse, perhaps it's in a result of a sexually abused past that you've experienced, you know? Perhaps it's the main cause of something that, main cause of what your depressed feelings, or your depressed emotions, your depressed thoughts. Maybe it's something you haven't dealt with fully on some level. Maybe it's something you have not dealt with fully on some level. Maybe you haven't acknowledged it fully to yourself. Maybe you haven't admitted it to yourself. Maybe you haven't spoken up about it. Maybe you haven't confronted that person who abused you. That can cause depression if you don't bring it out, bring it to light, bring it to other people who knew about this, or who may know that person. Confronting the abuser, possibly getting that abuser out of your life. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many things that can cause depression. I think it's something that is not dealt with. There's some kind of conflict between your heart, mind, and your soul. Your heart, mind, and your soul. Okay, some kind of conflict there. Did you come out with this trauma? Did you expose the person who hurt you? Or to anyone else? Did you go to therapy? Did you deal with the guilt and shame of it? Are you holding on to a lot of guilt and shame of it? Are you acknowledging the guilt and shame? You know what I'm saying? Did you take your power back? Did you take your power back? So I'm saying that if you answered no to these questions, then possibly that's the reason you're depressed? Possibly. And I'm saying this because before I came out with that abuse thing, okay, the sexual abuse that I experienced, I was very depressed, as with a lot of people who are, who have gone through that. You get depressed, you get hopeless, you isolate yourself, you do a whole bunch of stuff because you're dealing with a lot of emotional turmoil and a lot of mental turmoil. I was very depressed. It manifested in my body, it manifested in my ability to do things, my concentration, my appetite was all over the place. It really was all over the place. Just everything. Everything was affected. My emotions were affected. Everything was affected. And that is because there was things inside that I was holding in. Okay, and it's not really something that I want to fault myself for, because I was young, a lot younger. It was repressed somewhat. Repressed. You notice I said the word repressed? Depressed, repressed, suppressed, right? Something is being pressed, okay? That's what this depression is about. It's pressed. Something's pressed, okay? So it was repressed. So I didn't, it wasn't within the forefront of my consciousness that I needed to deal with something, but I was dealing with something. There were some energies, there were thoughts, there were beliefs, there was this traumatic thing that was inside of me that I didn't get out, that I didn't know, that I did not recognize, that I did not see, because it was partially repressed. And it was wreaking havoc on my mind and my body. It was wreaking havoc on my mind and my emotions and my body and everything else in my life. Because I was in a state of depression. I was in a state of depression. And that memory or that thought or that reality was repressed. So I was depressed. You get what I'm saying? It was only until... Okay, let me explain something else. But around the time that I was 18, and this was like a few years, about 4 or 5 years after the abuse stopped, I had a heartbreak that I experienced with a guy that I liked at that time, and he was somebody that I thought was the love of my life. No, he wasn't. I thought he was the love of my life, but he was not. Anyway, but I noticed that I was so depressed after that, what happened, how it went wrong, and the fact that we just stopped talking, and it was really bad. It was really, really bad for me. It was very devastating for me, but I think it was really linking to somehow subconsciously or something. It was bringing out these old emotions or the things that I haven't dealt with because of the fact that I was abused. I was really depressed. I was depressed because I was heartbroken, but it was a lot deeper than that. I really think it was a lot deeper than that, because I would say that I don't know I really can't sit here and diagnose what kind of depression it was, but I was barely eating. And I was fatigued all the time. And I would just go to school, and I would come home and I'd cry. And then I'd wake up and I'd go to, school, and I would barely eat. I would only eat sweets. I'd only eat sugary stuff. I'd eat crackers or, things that really weren't that good for me. But then when I came home, I would stay in my bed. And I'd cry and I'd cry and I'd cry, and I cried for like a year. A little over a year. Like literally, I'd cry and just cry. Everything was crying, and I was very, 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 very depressed, and I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of weight. I was pretty thin. I was pretty thin because I couldn't eat and I was depressed. But I really think there was a connection to what it is that I wasn't dealing with, or I was not able to deal with at that point. I wasn't able to deal with it because my mind was still holding something back because I couldn't deal with it at that time. So I had to go through, that heartbreak, and I thought it was the heartbreak, but it was not the heartbreak. It was something else, and I was really depressed at that time. So anyway, I kind of snapped out of that one, but I still think there was more of like a mild depression, on and off throughout the years, and then it fluctuated. It went back and forth, and there was other times where I ate so much, and I would oversleep, and I'd be just very agitated, and I still, you know what I mean? It was just a whole convoluted soup of stuff. I can't, it's really hard to distinguish all of it, but I know that I was depressed, and if anything, if I were to classify, I'd probably pick out three of those. At least three of those ones that I talked about. But yeah, it was so, this depression thing, I'm telling you, when I got to the point where I came out with the whole situation and I spoke my truth and I exposed my brother for the one being the abuser, and I told my family, and I went through the whole process, which is humiliating, and I went to therapy and I did all of that stuff. I noticed that the depression subsided, for sure. The depression subsided a lot. Not saying it stopped all at once, not saying that it was bam. I was just walking in roses and flowers, and, everything was great, and gumdrops, lollipops, and I was going to school, not school, sorry, I was just, getting all the money I wanted in the world, and, everything was great. No. It was still very, very difficult, but I was not nearly as depressed as I was before when, before I came out with that whole thing, okay? It subsided. I was a lot more balanced. Over time, I became more balanced. I became more, in control of my emotions. I became more aware of what it is I was doing. I became more, more emotionally and mentally well, because something came out, and I brought it out. I brought it out. I let it out. I exposed it. I took it out. I acknowledged it. I dealt with it. I observed it. I healed those things that I needed to heal. Okay, so I really believe that depression has a lot to do with the things that we hold on inside, the things that we don't face and don't deal and don't look at, don't acknowledge. Do not take out and examine and throw away the things that don't belong there. I believe that's what depression really is telling you, okay? All of these things are not fun, they suck, but I believe that it's telling you something. Everything is telling you something. Everything that your mind and your body and everything that you're being communicated to about is telling you something, okay? Yeah, so it's really just a matter of whether you've faced and you've dealt, or you've done your healing work, or there's something else that you need to pay attention to, or there's something else, there's some kind of belief or thought or idea or some distortion within you that needs to be looked at, because possibly it's festered and it's become so big and so expansive that you can't see past it, and it's creating a lot of problems, which is the depression, which is what you're depressed about. Okay? Also, it's not just that, but going on to something else, but how is your present circumstances? Because that has a lot to do with, whether you're depressed or not. And if that has any connection to what it is that you've previously experienced, that perhaps you didn't get the lesson to, or something yet you haven't dealt with, because I believe that externally you are shown what it is that you need to heal. So perhaps you are dealing with something that relates to something all the way back then that you haven't dealt with. So how are your present circumstances? How is your living situation? What is a part of your life that's not working? What's a part of your life that's not working? What is causing you this upset or sadness? What is it that disturbs you? What's not working in your life? Another thing is consider possibly on the very physical level, maybe there's something going on inside of you. Chemical imbalance, hormonal imbalance, abnormalities in your mind, in your brain, that could be causing this issue. So if that's the case, you probably want to go to, what's a brain doctor called again? Neurologist? I don't think that's the right term. Okay, but go to a doctor, go to a psychologist, go to a psychiatric professional, go to someone, okay, based on whatever it is that you think can tell you something about yourself. If you suspect that there's something going on inside of you, to make an assessment psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and physically, perhaps you may want to do that. Just, it's good to know. It's good to know if there is something that's not working within you. And of course, it is your choice. It is always your choice, depending on what you discover, what you know, what you feel like you should be doing. If perhaps if you were prescribed some kind of a treatment or drug or program or support or whatever, it's up to you what you want to do. Okay? But anyway, I'm just going to give you some stuff that you can do naturally, because that's all I'm about. It's a natural side, right? But one of the biggest points, we're just going to get right into it because I think this is becoming a little too long, is exercise. Exercise. Yes. Do you know how important exercise is? Exercise is so important. And what I'm saying is because it helps to boost natural chemicals in the brain, such as serotonin and endorphins. And these are the chemicals that help you feel good. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel content and peaceful and calm. Okay? It works great. And when you are depressed, you need a boost in endorphins and serotonins and other things, dopamine and all that other stuff. That's going to help you feel well and feel better and peaceful and calm and relaxed. Okay? It works. This is the point that I wanted to say to you. It works just as well as antidepressants. Did you know that? So instead of and of course you can use antidepressants. It's okay. But I'm saying, why not do something that's free and something that's natural and something that feels good and that's good for your body and doesn't really have any side effects? So it works just as well as antidepressants. You have a better sense of well-being. It helps you to sleep. So let's say if you are experiencing some kind of insomnia issues or sleep disturbances, working out, exercising can help you sleep. It can help to improve your memory and your cognitive processes. You're more calm, you're more peaceful. It reduces stress, okay? You need exercise. Exercise, do not underestimate exercise. Your body can heal itself. The more you exercise, and I know, I've talked about this before. I don't want to get into it. I talk too much. Yeah, but exercise is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing for your mind and your body and your health, especially if you're depressed and your body needs a boost and it needs that prop and it needs that support. This is how you can naturally, produce these type of hormones so that you can ultimately feel better, have better symptoms, or not have better symptoms, but feel better, lessen the symptoms, lower the symptoms, and ultimately heal yourself, okay? It's just as good as laughter. It's just as good as sleep. You know what I mean? It's very good for you. Eat healthy foods. So you are what you eat. And I think, a lot of people do not realize that you really are what you eat. So if you eat crap, you're going to feel like crap. Don't eat any more crap. Okay? Eat healthy foods. And I'm going to get more into this stuff in my next couple videos. I like to leave a little bit of extra information in other videos. Okay? But you are what you eat, and food has a great bearing on your emotional and mental health. I think I've explained this already. If you go back to my episodes about, neglecting, how to overcome neglecting, self-neglect, which is food and sleep. You can go back to those episodes. Could give you some more, more. It can give you some more information about sleep, the importance of sleep, the importance of proper diet and nutrition and food. I don't think I talked about exercise so much, but anyway, yeah. So stay away from that stuff. Stay away from that junky stuff, please. Preserved foods, chemicals, sodium and sugar, high-fat foods, junk. Okay, because it's going to make you feel worse. It does. It really does. And what I was saying about one of the causes of depression is can be an overload of toxins. So if you, let's say if you are depressed because you have an overload of toxins, don't put any more toxins into your body. That's what got you into the mess in the first place. Or even if it wasn't it wasn't caused by overload of toxins, still, be careful about what you're putting in your body, because that can just make you feel worse, and that can worsen the situation. Especially because some of these things that are put into the food can affect your, the production of certain hormones, or the production of certain natural chemicals within your body. It can wreak havoc on certain things in your body. So perhaps some of those chemicals and toxins can create those hormonal balances, which can cause depression. You know what I'm saying? It's all connected. So be careful what you're doing, okay? Next point is make sure you have a lot of omega-3s, okay? Omega-3s are very, very good for depression, very good for healing your body, healing those cells, replacing those cells, helping your body to revitalize and replenish itself, okay? And I don't know, specifically, omega-3s are very, very good for your brain. I know fish foods, which is where the omegas come from, the omegas come from fish foods, is very, very good for your brain. This is why they call it brain food. And your brain needs a lot of healing, and it needs replenishing, and it needs rebuilding, and your brain needs to replace those old cells with new ones so you can start to feel better, okay? So eat fatty fishes. That sounds funny. Eat fatty fish. Like mackerel, salmon, sardines. It just sounds funny. It's not anything, it's not an inside joke or anything. It's just funny. It sounds funny. I find a lot of weird things funny. Okay, so eat foods that are rich in omega-3s, okay? Mackerel, salmon, sardines, flax seeds, nuts, walnuts, almonds, things like that. Eat those foods, a lot of those foods, okay? Foods with antioxidants, because you need to get those toxins out of your system, right? That can be causing that depression, which is ultimately cell damage, okay? So you need to have foods with antioxidants. Antioxidants. You need to have food with antioxidants. So antioxidants prevent cell damage and encourage cell repair. Do you hear me? So green tea is a good thing. Green tea is one of those things. Blueberries are another one. Blueberries are very good for antioxidants. I love blueberries. Beta-carotene, orange foods. Foods that are orange. Carrots, cantaloupe, apricots, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, peaches. Broccoli also has beta-carotene. That stuff is very good for healing your body as well, healing your mind as well. Vitamin C. Blueberries, like I said, grapefruit, kiwi, strawberries, tomato. Vitamin E, nuts, seeds, vegetable oils, wheat. Foods that are rich in protein. And this boosts awareness and alertness, so you can get rid of all that fogginess and crap. Lack of concentration, impairment in cognitive abilities with protein. Lean meats, beans, peas, okay? You can even try natural supplements, adaptogen herbs, okay? Like herbs, adaptogen herbs, jasmine tea, chamomile, lavender oil, Saint John's wort. Is that how I say it? Saint John's wort, which helps fight depression and anxiety. Yeah, there's a lot of different things, natural things that you can take. There's a lot of natural things you can take that can help with your healing and boosting your energy and your alertness and your concentration and your mood. Okay, this is another one. Please, please, please get adequate sleep. Please do that. Please. We know about sleep. You can go back to that episode that I was talking about with how to overcome self-neglect, which is neglecting sleep. You can go back to that episode. I'm sorry, I don't remember which episode it is right now. Okay. That helps overall mood. Get adequate sleep. Sleep, you heal, you replenish, you're just better off when you have more sleep. You notice when you don't sleep, you feel more angry and irritable and frustrated, and you know what I'm saying? You just feel off. Well, add that onto the depression. That's not going to be a very pretty sight. Okay? Your body better heals itself when it's sleeping. So get enough sleep. Get enough sunlight. You need sun. Vitamin D. Boosts mood, happiness, and wellness. We know about sunlight. Sunlight is very, very good. This is why I can relate to seasonal affective depressive disorder. That's a real depressive disorder. That's another one that I forgot to mention, where people who, I guess, live in regions where they don't experience so much sunlight, year round. Of course, there's always the sun. The sun is always there, but they don't really get to experience or have that sunlight or have that direct sunlight in the region for more than, a few times, not a few times, but a few months in a year. And they become depressed because of the sun. They're lacking sun. They're lacking vitamin D. And the sunlight really does help to bring out your mood. Right? So if you are not getting enough sunlight or vitamin D from the sun, you're going to be depressed. Okay? That's going to help you. It's going to, prevent you from feeling better. So get enough sunlight. Get enough sunlight. Go outside. Go to the park. Even if you're in a region where you don't get a lot of sun, go to a place where there's more sun. Get your vitamin C in, or somehow. I'm pretty sure they have different kind of bulbs and light bulbs that can give you the same effect as sunlight, the way that sunlight would give you. Of course, it's artificial. It's not as good as a real thing, but it can definitely help. I heard about those. Okay? The next and last and final point, my gosh, is rid yourself of negative, toxic relationships. That's a big one that can really wreak havoc on you. Build and invest in more positive, loving, and supporting relationships. You've got to do that, okay? It's not going to help your healing, recovery, your betterment, your emotional, mental wellness if you have toxic people, if you have narcissistic people, users, manipulators, cheaters, abusers around you. It's like an oxymoron, to health, to recovery. You need to put yourself around people who are conducive to healing, conducive to uplifting, conducive to recovery, conducive to everything else, okay? Toxic people will infect your life. I'm sorry, it sounds really, really bad, but it's true. Toxicity, let's put it this way. Let me sound nicer. Toxicity from people can infect your life, okay? And it can affect your mood and your ability to heal and your mental, your thoughts and your beliefs, okay? In the next episode, I'm going to be getting into more of the behaviors that we engage in as a result of depression, okay? Like self-neglect. And the next one will be overindulgence, okay? So I'm going to be speaking more about that and expanding a little bit more on it and some of the things that we can do, the strategies and the things we can do to bring ourselves back more on track, okay, and bring us out of depression, bring us away from perpetuating that depressive cycle, okay? That's all for today. Thank you for listening to A Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Wholeness After Sexual Abuse. If you like what you heard, please rate and review on iTunes. Next week, we will explore, like I just said, depression and self-neglect. So be sure to tune in, and until next time, take care.